you in here to do their dirty work while they skulk about outside.
Hello again everyone and welcome back. This is episode 20 in my continuing series of video scenario guides, this dealing with the bane of my existence excursion known of as Logrin's Forge. Now truly, that's a little hyperbole, but I have heard this scenario described by others as exactly that, the bane of someone's existence. Of course, that comment is to be taken in context of playing the game. But it is true that the general experience when in a group, the overall reaction to seeing Logrin's Forge pop up tends to follow this line.
No! 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 No!
What? No!
No!
No. No, no.
No, 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 no. But hey, sometimes you have to go fight where you have to go fight. So how does that make me feel? Well, truly, I never liked this scenario. Part of that is due to the base mechanic. Okay, not that type of mechanic. I mean like High Pass Cemetery and Kane's Embrace, Logrin's Forge features a 2-point capture slogfest, which at least initially, in the opening moments of the SC, tends to engender a stand around, wait and see, staring contest default strategy. Of course, it doesn't have to be that way, but discussion on that later. Still, I never liked this scenario. Such sentiment could also be due to the fact that it's a giant Dwarf forge in which nothing ever gets done. I mean, really, if you ever saw The Hobbit, all that's missing here is a giant pile of gold with a dragon sleeping under it, and a handful of dwarves bitching and moaning about it. Of course, there are dwarves in this scenario, but all they do is stand around and ask you to pull their finger. Still, I never liked this scenario. Playing it is like watching an episode of one of your favorite television shows, like, say, Star Trek. Only one of the crappy episodes. So you are stuck like, oh, this is Star Trek, but this episode sucked, so, I don't know, like, I mean, whatever. However, I suppose a primary reason I never liked this scenario is the sense of lost potential it radiates. Logrin's Forge could be a grand time, and, admittedly, on occasion has been. What I'm specifically referring to is the design of the map, which compared to Reichland Hills, it does allow for multiple initial strategies to be employed, combined with promoting maneuver combat, quick strikes against the enemy, or mass battles in a number of locations. Sadly, however, what tends to happen in Logrin's Forge is one side or the other gets rolled, and the scenario devolves into a spawn camping bore fest. Lost or under-realized potential, as I said. Therefore, I suppose as the video progresses, that is what I will talk about. How the battles could progress, and how to influence just such an eventuality. But first, a word from our sponsor.
なあ、俺たち付き合ってんだよな。
え？何？
いや、好きって言われてないなと思って。
やめてよ。恥ずかしいじゃん。
いや、でも一度も言われてないし。
欲しがるな。
言葉にしてほしいんだよ。
わかった。ちゃんと好きです。
なんだよ、ちゃんとって。
青春かよ。ハングリーデイズカップヌードル。
I don't know what the end of the world has to do with eating noodles, but I found that commercial on YouTube and thought I would share because it was so well done. Okay, let's take a look at the scoring mechanics. As I stated earlier, Logrin's Forge is a 2-point capture scenario. However, in order to score points, both capture locations, the Anvil and Logrin's Tomb, must be claimed by your side. Upon capturing both locations, 80 points are awarded to the controlling team. In addition, capturing both objectives will grant a 15-second damage buff to all players of the controlling team. The 2 objective points then reset after 30 seconds. Individual kills are only worth 2 points each. Therefore, playing for the objectives is essential. And not just so you can score points and win the scenario, but because, you know, spawn point camping is for losers. But more on that when I get to Gromwell Crossing. Now here again is the map, which I will use to illustrate a few points. As is true in Reichland Hills, the initial spawn point here allows for 3 avenues of approach to reach out and engage the enemy. You can go right, left, or straight down the middle. Or you can split your forces and attempt to capture both locations. The problem here, of course, is if your opponent remains grouped and moves collectively to one objective point, your split team will probably get annihilated. However, that eventuality can be mitigated to an extent by employing a tactic I personally favor. Split your forces initially, but send the second group down the middle. The advantage here is in all probability your team will capture one of the 2 objectives. And if all your opposition moves to the same objective, those in the middle are in a good location to react quickly. Truly, in regard to whatever your opponent does. The same is true for those at the objective to move toward the middle if your opponent goes there. All players just have to be aware of their surroundings, communicate, know what's going on, and be prepared to move quickly in response to enemy actions. And really, I suppose, you know, I mean, I've made these kind of points in prior episodes, but for a serious examination of Logrin's Forge, that has to be reiterated, restated, because you do have to move quickly here. You have to be able and ready to move quickly, otherwise you can be caught off guard. And you know, once the mechanics of the scenario sort of help our favor, that once one side becomes disorganized, it's not impossible by any means, certainly, but it does tend to be difficult to take the time necessary to reorganize, get another plan together, and go back out. So you want to try to mitigate that by being ready to move and react quickly at the beginning of the scenario to avoid getting bogged down at your spawn point toward the end of the scenario. Okay, flanking actions can be utilized here as well via use of the upper and lower hallways. Now more on that later, but let's take a look at our first video segment. Now the initial point I'm going to make here, truthfully, was one that I was going to make when I did my final scenario episode for the Eternal Citadel, but I decided to go ahead and make it now to give, as you see, credit where credit is due. Now this is footage from when I was still in Zaxx, and we were in a Zaxx pre-made here. And the simple truth is that a lot of the video I've been using to construct my guides does feature and was recorded when I was running with a lot of Zaxx pre-mades. So I owe them a debt of gratitude just for having a video, being able to run with them. And so I wanted to go ahead and just say thank you now, because that's the right thing to do. And now we'll go on with the scenario, and as you can see, we went right, which tends to be the norm. But there comes destruction. They threw us a curveball. They come out here to meet us by going left out of their spawn point. Now I do get the initial capture. They got there just too late to stop me, but we have both points. Someone else went over to the anvil and picked that one up. Now our emphasis here, because we're in a pre-made, which again this also tends to be the norm, is on engaging the enemy. And we get the first score, we have the damage bonus, but we're a little disorganized here. We got all strung out, and because of that, initially in this SC, we're going to pay the price. So after the respawn, I can see that both objectives are once again controlled by order. So I figured it didn't matter which way I went, but I came out here because this is where the guys were. Destruction is all over the point here, and I got no choice but just to ride in. Okay, now we're going to get our act together here in a moment and continue to sort of dominate. But at this particular moment, discretion was the better part of valor, and we're going to use this time for something that is legitimate in any scenario that you play. you know, whether you're going to pre-mate or not, it is a legitimate action to take to regroup, get back together, and then push back to engage the enemy. Now here, Easy Mom just happened to be out on his own for some reason, and you know, we took the time to go ahead and eliminate him. But his being out there and leading us into the hallway also gave us an opportunity. And that opportunity was one of the flank movements that I talked about briefly as part of that long introduction, that you can't do this. So we hit the destruction guys holding this particular objective from the flank. Now I'm going to slow this down. Now watch, this is a function of the terrain here in Logrin's Forge. The Chamois faster than both me and the Witch Hunter, but we're able to catch him because he has to curve right or left. He's having to curve left, one, to stay in the range of his allies, be able to use his abilities, and because the terrain forces him to make that move. He could have turned right and ran off by himself. He could have went down the hallway. But because the terrain forced him into that little arcing move to the left, we were able to catch up to him. And Nadril makes the kill there. Okay. Oh, there's another chamois right there, which comes out, and we're able to finish him off as well. And that's always important. You know, target selection. And again, this is nothing none of you have not heard before. But, you know, in case some of the new players may get a look in here, target selection is always important, and you should always attempt to take out their healers first. Okay, this is an important aspect of Logrin's Forge. We clear out that objective, but immediately mount up and get moving. Oh, here's Easy Mom again. I guess he was trying to find a 1v1, and if that was the case, this is not the best scenario to try to do that. There's a lot of room to run around here, because regardless of what the terrain features here, there really aren't any good places to hide. So we catch him again, and then off we go. We got to keep moving. Now we saw that there were order already at the objective we were heading to, so we made a quick turn to go the other way. And that is another aspect of Logrin's Forge that you need to take advantage of. It doesn't take that long when you're using the middle tunnels there. It doesn't take that long to get from one side or the other. And it's a function of mobility. And I've said this again in prior episodes, that, you know, there are times when it is particularly not just relevant, but essential that you maintain your mobility. And Logrin's Forge, that is the best way to approach it, is to be a mobile force. Okay, I'm going to come out of this one because, as you can see, we were kind of dominating, and we do get, you know, we do rack up the victory here, so it wasn't any point in dragging it out. But it was illustrative of the fact that we did, after the initial wipe, that, you know, the initial point that we did suffer, we got our act together, remained mobile, and was able to keep up with the enemy, keep them off guard, and win. Okay, segment 2. Now this was also a pre-made, but this one, as I recall, we just sort of put it together in group chat out, you know, in the realm, and wound up all together. And so this time we decided to go left. And as you saw, or may have seen in the scenario screen that I had up for a moment, this scenario begins as a 6v6. There's 6 of us, there's 6 of them. So this, I put this video in because it does illustrate another point I made during the introduction, in that you can get into these sort of boring, prolonged stairfest, sort of standing around. And that's going to happen here because it's a low pop scenario. Okay, so now we begin to play the waiting game. We've captured a point. Destruction isn't here, so obviously they're on the other side of the map. I think we're missing, oh yeah, the stairfest. Playing Logrin's Forge sometimes is about as engaging and as fun as watching this. So here we are. We're just sort of standing around waiting to see what our opposition is going to do. And they give us a hint. They went ahead and took the hammer. Now a few more guys are logging in, but for the moment we're just going to sit here. And in retrospect, when I look back at this, you know, you can see Hops is in here, Sleepy K, Goth, and we all tend to be pretty aggressive players, so I'm not exactly sure how we got into the decision to just stand there for a while, but part of that is the design of the map. The design of the map sort of plays into that. Okay, so we finally moved to engage, and the destruction forces, you know, come out here and engage us in a good little fight. Now look what they're doing. Okay, they're pushing to the objective, and that's what they should be doing, because they're already down. Well, they're not down by much. 15 points is all we have, but they do know, both sides know, that in order to win the scenario and have the best chance to win the scenario, you have to take the objectives, and that's what they were attempting to do. So it may not work out for you, and in this particular case it doesn't work out for them, but that's kind of beside the point. You know, there are times you just have to make the effort to get out there and capture the objectives. Okay, so we get both objectives again. We get the damage bonus, and now we're just gonna head back to the other side. Again, a function of the mobility aspect of the scenario that you really must keep doing. I mean, I sincerely believe that you know, you have to keep moving. Now in this particular case, we didn't gain a whole lot because we're headed for the anvil, and the anvil was already captured. So obviously, you know, we should be going to the other side. But for not, again, kind of an unknown reason, we're going to stand around here just a little bit, just to wait to see what our opposition does. Now the other group, you saw them moving off down the hallway, and I suppose in retrospect that's why we stayed here, because they took off, and we're going to, you know, use all this power that we have in a 6-man to guard the anvil. But we should be moving to engage the opposition, and finally off we go. And I'll just, you know, make the point again. I've made it clear that I don't really like this SC, but if you're going to play it, you have to be aggressive here, and the standing around option is, you know, it's a detriment. Now as you can see, I was kind of bored playing this particular SC, and I kind of was so bored that I was actually talking with someone in party chat. But we get into another fight and managed to lock down both points. So now we have the damage buff, and I'm going to use some video here in a moment to illustrate, or to try to help illustrate, you know, how effective that can be. Now watch. The damage boost is in effect. I'm after the Witch Elf. You can just watch the numbers. It's not that they're grand, but I can tell by looking at them that I was getting a little bit of a boost there. You know, I crit twice for almost 1,000 points each, and at that rate, with the number of people on her, you know, she wasn't long for this world. But this is Warhammer, so she'll be back. Okay, now we push in through destruction, and you could probably tell from that particular angle what is coming next. We're going to engage in a little bit of that activity that I'm always speaking out against. Now we're not that close to the enemy spawn, yet we're pushing that way, and as you can see, the anvil has been taken by the opposition, so that should have been the immediate signal to break off here and go capture the anvil. But instead, we're going to try to, you know, fight and get a few kills down here just because, and that's the mentality, you know, just because we have destruction sort of backed up to one side of their spawn point. But you can see what's happening. They are, our destruction opposition here is able to push out some, Now, I'm not going to talk more about this here. I'm going to go ahead and come out of this scenario because we won. But when I get to Grommel Crossing, I do have some excellent video to illustrate the point that I actually want to make about spawn point camping. So I'll hold off till then. And but we get the win, and the second video segment there did at least illustrate a couple of points. So before I put in the last segment of video, let's do just a little bit of a review. Now, because of the map construction, there is a lot of room to maneuver, and Logrin's Forge, sadly, it most often goes underutilized. But combine that with the 2-point capture mechanic, and the SC sort of requires some aggressive mobility. You know, you have to get out initially and capture 1 point, but then you almost have to split your forces in this SC in order to lock down both objectives and get the points that you need to go on and win. So I do suggest in that context the strategy of send half your force right or left and another down the middle, because that puts the group in the middle in a perfect position to react to whatever it is your opposition is doing. And you can move quickly here, and I do suggest that you take advantage of the middle corridors there to get from one side or the other. Okay, here is the final segment of video, and I left this in because really this particular part I was just trying to offer a bit of props to our destruction opposition. We're chasing this blackguard around, but watch what he does here. Okay, that was just an excellent punt. You know, knocked that guy all the way down into the middle of all of his allies. So I left that in just to sort of honor, you know, the abilities of one of our destruction opposition. Okay, so now we move to take out one of their healers. We've locked down both points, and in just a second we'll get the we've got the score for it. So now we're going to push toward the destruction spawn point. But in this particular instance, we're not really doing it to try to rack up a kill count here. We were doing it just to get destruction off of the objective location. So now we're headed back because in just a few seconds the points are going to neutralize. There it goes. And what we immediately need to do, since capturing this side is a given, is move. And you know, you can see who again, this was one of the pre-mates I ran with Zach's and usual suspects, and we do that. I remember the conversation in this scenario. It was decided that the two of us would just go over here, but often in a low pop SC, which this one was, there wasn't a full group on either side, but often in a low pop FC you can do it. You can do it with just, you know, 2 or maybe 3 guys. Okay, another thing that's missing, when I watched this video I noticed that, oh, I'm sorry, I froze this because I just thought that was a cool image. And that's one of the things I do like about Logrin's Forge is apparently when they designed it they put a little effort into the graphics. So that was just kind of a cool image. But one thing when I watched this particular video and deciding what parts I wanted to use, that I noticed a lack of a tactic being employed here that I've seen a lot lately, and that was that sort of melee train, unstoppable stun or disable or unbreakable stun, whatever it's called. That's happening a lot lately, where you know somebody gets stunned and they gang up on you and you're just dead because it will not break. And I didn't see any of that in any of the Logrin's Forge videos that I used to make this episode, because all 3 of these videos were captured some time ago. So whatever that's worth. Okay, Destruction's captured the hammer, but that happens to be where we're fighting. So this was a decent little fight. I don't think I've ever, no, I haven't used this video before on any other effort, so I thought I'd put a little bit of it in because it was, was a decent fight. Okay, now again, we're pushing toward the destruction spawn, but again, on this occasion, we're not doing it as part of some sort of just random kill count strategy. We want to keep them off of the hammer to give one of our guys time to capture it. And there it goes. We were able to successfully accomplish that. So there's a lot of, because there's a lot of area here, and you can see it in the imagery from where the objective is to where the actual spawn point is. There is some area to maneuver, and you can push your enemy back in there, and that's all perfectly fine. Now what that last bit of video also reveals, it confirms a point I made during the introduction, and unfortunately that is Logrin's Forge can be kind of boring. As I said, it's just sometimes devolves into a slogfest, but that's kind of the inherent nature with any of the 2-point capture mechanic SCs. Logrin's Forge, High Pass, Kane's Embrace, they also sort of feature that inherent design flaw. Now, I'm not using the term flaw to denigrate anyone. I don't mean it that way at all. I mean, we inherited all these scenario maps, from the original design team. But the 2-point capture mechanics I've always just found, sort of lacking for different, well, for that one primary reason, is that they are 2-point capture mechanics. Okay, that brings us to the end, but one last thing. I was trying to decide what scenario to do next of the 4 I have left. So I went to visit the Dwarves under the mountain. They had a map. We had a discussion. Drank a little bit of their grog, and we decided that, based on the recommendation of the Dwarves, that the next SC we'll look at will be Blood of the Black Cairn. And maybe I'll go back and visit them again to figure out what's going on in episode 22. But as always, guys, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Take care, and we will see you next time.
Who would be so bold as to come armed into my kingdom? Spies? Thieves? Assassins?
Dwarves, your malevolence.
Dwarves?
We found them on the front porch.
Well, don't just stand there. Search them.